What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today we start off by previewing UFC 255's top fights featuring Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia and Deiveson Figueiredo versus Alex Perez. We give our predictions and how these fights will play out. Then we move over to the NFL where we break down what was a wild Week 10 and break down the Arizona Cardinals' Hail Murray and the Patriots' dominating performance over the Baltimore Ravens. Finally, we jump over to the NBA where we provide predictions and analysis for the upcoming 2020 NBA draft, as well as dive into the wild free agency period we are about to embark on. All that and much more coming your way right now. Nick, how is it going? How have you been? It is a crazy time for sports, and I'm fired up.
Oh yeah, no, this week is nutty, absolutely nutty. And if I have to hear Hail Murray one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind. Like it's getting a little ridiculous how many times people are using that. Oh
Well,
man, you know what?
I went to confession and I had to say 10 Hail Marys. So,
Oh my god, this is. I know it'll die off because the Cardinals hype will die off, but yeah, I can't deal with it anymore. And now we got all the NBA stuff going on. It's been a busy week so far, and it's not even Thanksgiving.
well, we are just so close to Thanksgiving, almost the end of 2020. I don't know how we got here, but we're here. I hope you guys are doing well. But let's jump right into it. So we're going to start off with the UFC.
Yeah, this Saturday we got UFC 255, and it's kind of a step back for the UFC. It's been big name after big name after big name, and the UFC's just been hammering away these big fights. And this November card, it's kind of lackluster. Yeah, you got two championship fights, but you know you're showing off the flyweight division for the men and women, and it's just not that exciting. I have to be honest, like it's just not. And you know you've got other guys on this card such as Platinum Mike Perry, but they only offer so much value. And I think for even somebody like me who tunes in for every pay-per-view no matter what, this is one that I'm really struggling to putting $65 on the line for to watch, because I look at Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia, and I look at Deiveson Figueiredo versus Alex Perez, and I think these champions are just going to wallop their competition. They're going to absolutely manhandle them, and it's not worth paying the money because I know the result already. There's no.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I hear those names, I think, who? Because the only name out of those four that I know, again, as I've specified multiple times, between the two of us on this show, you are the UFC guy, you are the UFC expert. That is your repertoire, right? So you know these names. I am the general UFC consumer. I buy pay-per-views, or I watch pay-per-views with you, and I ask a ton of questions, but I only know Valentina Shevchenko. She's the only name that I know out of the top four here. And for me, I have zero interest in buying this pay-per-view. And I can understand that, Dana White has done his due diligence and gotten us crazy fight card after crazy fight card. And, this one just didn't pan out that way. But I think he could have gotten at least a couple bigger names to headline this fight, because I cannot understand for the life of me how we've gotten to, we've gotten some crazy fight nights, but UFC 255 looks like a dud.
Yeah, it does. There's no sugarcoating it. You can't. The UFC is saying, hey, we're gonna kind of take a month off. We know that we're not gonna have the same pay-per-view buys as we normally do, but if you look in the future, December's UFC 256 looking like an absolute amazing fight card, and then they're trying to replace Amanda Nunes right now, and it's still gonna be much better than this fight even without Nunes on the card. And then we got Conor McGregor coming back in January. So you've got things to look forward to, and some fights you're going to want to watch. So those are the fights to really save your money for if you really don't see anybody here. It's not worth watching these fights in real time, because we're probably not going to see a big knockout from one of these underdogs, Jennifer Maia or Alex Perez. It's just going to be Deiveson Figueiredo and Valentina Shevchenko absolutely dominating these guys, because as the champs, they have just been very dominant. And since Deiveson Figueiredo's become the champ in the flyweight division, he has been dominant, and there really is nobody in the division that can compete with him. When I look at the flyweight division for the men, I don't see anybody else that can compete with him. I don't understand where some of these other networks, such as ESPN and Ariel Helwani, are coming off saying this division is revitalized. No, I agree with Dana White, how he did a few years ago when he was trying to get the Henry Cejudo to give up the belt so he could get rid of the division. There just is no excitement here. They fight at a very fast pace. They fight at a fast pace, and that's great and all, but there's just no explosiveness. There's no hard hits. There's nothing super exciting.
But that's the thing. Ariel Helwani from ESPN, his job is to basically pump this up, because ESPN and the UFC have such a long-standing history, a business history. They do a lot of business together. So, for him, he's got to hype this up so the UFC does well. We are not, like you have said to me, we are not network television. We give it to you raw. We give you our opinions, whether you agree to them or not, or agree with them or not. This is how we feel about certain things, and you take it or leave it, because we answer to nobody but ourselves and God. And at this point, UFC 255 looks like, something I'm going to sleep right through.
Yeah, I'll leave it at Valentina Shevchenko is going to win this fight. Deiveson Figueiredo is going to win this fight. I just saved you $65.
I'll take your word for it. Unfortunately, that's what we have for the UFC. But I do want to say, and we just talked about this right before we went live, Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar actually signed a fight contract for a fight night happening in January. I think that's going to be an incredible fight and something that we should look forward to as well. I'm a little surprised that's a fight night matchup versus something that should be on UFC 258 or even further out.
Yeah, this fight, it's going to be great to watch. As somebody from the New England area, I love supporting Calvin Kattar. He's a great fighter. He's on the rise. He's going to do great things as a featherweight. But Max Holloway, I think this is a little bit of a reach for Calvin Kattar. Max Holloway is the greatest featherweight of all time. There's nobody that touches him. And although he's not the champ, he's still an amazing fighter. And I think Calvin Kattar still has to work his way up to a guy like Max Holloway. It's going to be a great fight. I can't wait to watch this, and I'm glad it's a free fight. But it's going to be tough for Calvin Kattar. This is a huge leap forward for him, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles the level up in competition. But this can only hurt Max Holloway. I don't think Calvin Kattar can really get hurt by a loss in this situation. Max, if Max were to lose this fight to Calvin Kattar, it not only pushes Calvin Kattar right up to the number one contender spot, but I think this bumps Max Holloway down possibly out of the top 5 featherweights. Like it's risky territory. It's
very possible.
It's very similar to Paul Felder, who just lost to RDA, and now you see Paul Felder just got bumped. RDA is number 6 right now in the rankings in the lightweight division because of that win. Things happen. Anything can happen in a fight, and it can have such huge impacts on your career. I don't know if this is smart for Max Holloway. I don't know if it's smart for Calvin Kattar if he wants to continue on this trend of moving forward. It's more likely than not he's going to lose this fight, and it's just I think that he could.
It'll at least give him a taste of bigger competition and somebody who's been at the top of this game, once before.
it'll give him that taste of competition. He gets to headline his own event. So those are huge pluses. That's what you want. Like, now your name's out there, you're getting more exposure. It's good for him in that aspect. I want to see Calvin Kattar do better in the featherweight division, probably the most competitive division in the UFC right now. And I think that this is a huge leap forward for him. Good luck to both these guys. I have tremendous respect for both of them. I know it's going to be an absolute brawl, so it's not going to disappoint in any aspect.
No, for sure, and we'll talk more about it as the time comes.
For sure.
But speaking of Max Holloway, before we get off this subject, I just want to congratulate him for getting engaged. Max Holloway is, if you know anything about me, I am a gamer at heart. I play a lot of video games. Max Holloway plays a lot of video games, and our paths have crossed on that level. But I want to wish him congratulations to getting engaged. That's an incredible thing for him and now his fiance. All the best for them moving forward. But with that being said, I think that's going to do it for our UFC. Again, UFC 255, not looking all that great. We will cover it after it happens, and we'll break it down, especially if there's any upsets. But as of right now, this is what you can expect. But for now, let's move over to the NFL. All right, so we had quite some crazy storylines to follow this weekend in week 10 in the NFL. First and foremost, the Arizona Cardinals, and we talked about it in our intro and then our immediate after prologue. But basically just talking about this Hail Murray. I mean, Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, we've known that they are something special together. They solidified that fact with how they ended this game against the Buffalo Bills on an Aaron Rodgers-esque throw in the middle of Arizona to win the game. DeAndre Hopkins goes over 3 defenders and gets the perfect catch down in the end zone. This was just an absolute incredible. It was a miracle that it went perfectly. But overall, it's one of those things that you look at somebody who's Kyler Murray's age, and you look at DeAndre Hopkins, who was traded for a 2nd-round pick, and you say, how the hell did we get to this point? I mean, maybe you can explain it to me, Nick.
Yeah, you know what? I don't even think this was. Just talk about the catch real quick. The throw, you can say it's Aaron Rodgers-esque. I think this is Kyler Murray. I think this is his spin on what he'll do moving forward, because if you watch how he threw this ball, I mean, he was flushed out of the pocket right away. Like, you never see people get pressured on these Hail Mary throws. And now here come the Bills rushing the passer, and he flushes out and throws off his back foot while falling out of bounds. Like, that's something Aaron Rodgers couldn't even do. Like, this is all Kyle Murray. And DeAndre Hopkins just out-leaping everybody else who he's draped around all these white jerseys. I mean, it's just an amazing play by 2 bona fide stars in this league. DeAndre Hopkins is arguably the best receiver in the league. The Arizona Cardinals are doing it right this season. They've made tremendous progress, and that's why they are atop the NFC West right now, and the Seattle Seahawks have dropped to number 3. And now this upcoming Thursday, we get to see that matchup once more and see if the hype train, if the momentum can keep moving forward for the Arizona Cardinals. Because I'll tell you, if the Arizona Cardinals can get 2 games on top of the Seattle Seahawks this season, I think the Arizona Cardinals are a lock for the NFC West championship.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. Like I said, my bold prediction in the early part of the season, before the season started, was that 3 teams from the NFC West were going to end up making the playoffs. And I'm looking pretty good with that right now. Looking at the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. These teams are extremely competitive. We're going to see an incredible matchup on Thursday night when the Cardinals take on the Seahawks for the 2nd time. If you remember how the first one ended, it was also, just late game heroics by Kyler Murray to score a touchdown in, overtime to end up winning that game. But yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray has shown us a whole hell of a lot in year two. Cliff Kingsbury has shown that he is up for the task. He has helped progress Kyler Murray into the player that he is. Now, I don't want to give Cliff Kingsbury too much credit because Kyler Murray is still Kyler Murray. I mean, we knew what we were getting with the number one overall pick. But to the Steve Keim to add DeAndre Hopkins, only giving up a second round pick, adding pieces to this offense to protect Kyler Murray, I think they are in a very good position moving forward. And if I'm a Cardinals fan, I have nothing but hope and joy in my future because there is nothing more you could ask for than the position that the Cardinals are in right now.
Yeah, and this is a team that doesn't have their best defensive player in Chandler Jones. Right. I mean, I can't imagine what this team would be like with him, a guy who averages like 16, 17 sacks a season. I mean, he would be such a huge impact for them, and yet they're still getting it done without him. This team is absolutely incredible. Cliff Kingsbury, in my book, he's going to be coach of the year. This is the biggest turnaround I've ever seen for an organization, and it's about time that we got some fresh blood in this division because it was getting a little bit stale between the Niners and Seahawks all these years.
For
the
sure,
Rams, I guess.
Yeah. But like I said, there's definitely a tie at the top. It's funny that you mentioned, they're getting the job done without their best player, and I guess you could kind of bring this to our next topic, and that would be the New England Patriots. They have struggled to get it done without their formerly best player in Tom Brady. They were winning games or in close games with top contenders, and then they lost some questionable games, and then it looked like they were all ready for the tank, but then they've won the last two, and here we are. We're kind of in limbo, competing for playoffs or trying to get a better draft slot. We don't, things are all over the place right now in New England. But what I can say is that the Patriots definitely showed something interesting on Sunday night against the Baltimore Ravens. And we can talk about this a little in detail, but Lamar Jackson looks so flustered when he is kept as a pocket passer. It seems like he cannot live up to the task as a passing quarterback, and he needs to rely on his ability to run the ball in order to open up passing lanes for him, because without that, I don't think he can get it done like a Kyler Murray or any of these other standing in the pocket, make any type of throw guys.
Well, I think speaking to the Ravens real quick, we as soon as we heard the news that Marshall Yonder retired, we knew this run game was going to take a major hit. And yes, we see it. Lamar Jackson is just not the same runner. He's still...
And they lost their right tackle to opting out.
Right. So the entire right side has been completely... It's like a revolving door for them this year. And they're struggling to figure it out. I mean, we've only seen Lamar Jackson rush for over 100 yards once this season. And yeah, we're talking about the quarterback position, but we're also talking about Lamar Jackson, who did this every other game last year. Right. And to see him humanized this year, it's pretty surprising. After an MVP caliber season, having an MVP season last year, to this, it's just, it's crazy. And I think everybody's starting to learn not only how to beat this offense, but beat Lamar Jackson. And once you get this Ravens offense into a negative game script where they have to throw the ball, it's all but game over for them, because Lamar Jackson, yeah, he's fairly accurate, but he doesn't throw deep balls. He doesn't throw, these rocket arm throws. He's just, he'll throw the safe guy, the safety net, and he's not going to stray from that. He's not going to try to turn the ball over. And when you need to get a touchdown now, you're not going to get out of him most of the time. So
right,
these are things that were questions on him as a quarterback going into the draft, and there's still questions with him as a starter 2 years later. So
yeah, I mean, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, I'm not, but if I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan, I as much as I don't want to make excuses for how poorly they performed, the weather was a major factor. You can't say it wasn't, even though both teams had to play in it. the Ravens their entire scheme was basically thrown out the window because they were only left with one thing, and that's running the ball. And if the Patriots were able to stop the run, it was going to be game over, and they were able to do just that. On top of that, it seems like the absence of Calais Campbell and the loss of Brandon Williams during the game definitely struck a chord with this defense and their inability to stop the Patriots' rushing attack. Specifically, Damian Harris for 3.5 quarters was unstoppable, rushing for $125. And then you had Rex Burkhead, who looks like he was shot out of a rocket every time he got the ball in the backfield. It's just one of those things where the Baltimore Ravens are in a serious amount of trouble if they can't get these issues rectified. And it's getting to a point where, you can laud and praise Lamar Jackson all you want. Personally, I'm not a big fan of his ability as a quarterback. I think he's a fantastic athlete. I just don't think he is a capable quarterback, which is why I think he was handed the MVP trophy last year. But we can get into that another time. My particular issue is that the Ravens offense becomes extremely stagnant, whether that's the offensive coordinator or Lamar Jackson's inabilities. And the defense has been getting shredded both on the ground and in the air because they can't generate pressure with 4. That's why they got Yannick Ngakoue. Then they suffer more injuries. It's just it's like one thing after another with this Ravens team. I have to imagine that there's got to be a line somewhere with John Harbaugh saying enough is enough. We can't keep making excuses, but I don't know what else there is for Baltimore to do. They've made the necessary moves at the trade deadline. They've tried to sign everybody that they possibly can under the cap. I don't exactly know what they can do more.
Yeah, I don't see the John Harbaugh or anybody in the Ravens front office moving on from Lamar Jackson for at least another 3-4 years. They're going to let him work through his rookie contract. He did have he was the last pick of the first round, so he gets that 5th-year option. So you still have 2 to 3 more years with him before you have to pay him. And they're going to use all of that time to figure out whether he's the guy moving forward or if we need to restart. And if he can't win you a single playoff game by then, you're going to know it's time to move on. So you'll know in a few years, nothing's going to happen between now and then. I want to focus more on the Patriots right now because they're in a very interesting situation. And like you mentioned, they would look like they were going for the tank earlier this year. They lost to the Broncos. They lost Cam Newton for the Chiefs game. And then they were kind of spiraling out of control during those few weeks. And then they kind of brought it back. They barely squeaked by the Jets. Then they go out and beat the Ravens, which was a huge upset this past week. And now they're sitting at 4-5 with the potential to actually compete in this conference. I mean, we talked about the NFC West, which is very competitive. Let's talk about the NFC East, which is probably the most competitive Eastern Conference or AFC division right now. These teams are playing great right now. Miami is on the rise, just like Arizona. Buffalo's killing it, but they're kind of skidding right now. But they'll figure it out. They have Sean McDermott. The Patriots, Bill Belichick is figuring out how to play without Tom Brady, and he's slowly figuring it out, as well as Josh McDaniels. They figured something out in that Jets game. Josh McDaniels said he completely went away from his normal game script and came with a new plan for Cam Newton, and it's working so far. They're running the ball better, they're passing the ball better, and the defense looks like there's a fire lit underneath them right now.
And the Patriots have been doing this without Stephon Gilmore, without Juwan Bentley, plus all of the people that they lost prior to the season. If there was a built-in mulligan for any team going into the season, I have to imagine the Patriots had that. You lose the greatest quarterback of all time. You lose your defensive captain and juggernaut middle linebacker. On top of that, you have your starting right tackle and starting strong safety both opt out of the season. and there's constant turnover and no preseason. You had to bring in a new quarterback who couldn't learn the offense until 3 weeks before the season started with no practices. I mean, there's a whole hell of a lot. So I think they're still working through a lot of this stuff. My assumption is that things will continue to get better and better for the New England Patriots as they move forward. I think they need to focus on, you know, doing what they can to get into the playoffs, and just competing and seeing, really gauging where the team is, because if they can become a competitive team now, then they say, okay, what do we need to do? We need to get wide receiving and tight end weapons for Cam Newton, and we need to add a couple more pieces on defense. And I think they will be right back into the swing of competing for the division, competing for the conference, and then possibly competing for a title.
Right now, we got to also remember the Patriots are playing with the strongest strength of schedule. They have the hardest matchups moving forward, and as it stands right now, I project them to go either 8-8 or best 9-7 on the season, which could potentially make them get into the playoffs in that seventh seed. Do you think the Patriots should try to make the playoffs, or is it worth them sitting one out and getting a better draft pick?
In as far as it's concerned right now, try to make the playoffs. I think you need to gauge everything that you have right now, because what I understand is that if you are going to try to get a better draft pick, the entire goal needed to be Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or Jamar Chase. All three of those players are now out of the conversation with the way the Patriots have played the last 2 weeks. So that'll bring up who are you going to grab? Some middle first round guy. I mean, you can possibly do that even by making the playoffs, because even if they miss the playoffs, they're only going to miss it by a game or two, and that means maybe 3 or 4 draft slots. Even if they have a guy that they like in the middle of the first round, they could end up trading up for him and not giving up too much, because, again, I don't see them competing in the playoffs, but I can definitely see them just showing up and showing out. I want to see if Damian Harris can sustain this ability to run. I want to see what they have in Rex Burkhead, if Sony Michel has a future in New England. I want to see if this offensive line continues to improve week after week after week. And then that defense, it's been a rotating door at the linebacker position all season long. Now they have Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche back there. They have Terez Hall leading the middle linebacking core. Let's see what those guys can do. Let's see what the pass rush looks like. Let's see if J.C. Jackson can hold on to the number one cornerback position. Jason McCourty looked phenomenal, but he's not going to be there for the long haul. Let's see if Joejuan Williams can take over. Let's see what these young guys that we have held in check for so long now, let's let them flourish. Let's let them compete and see how far they can take us. Because if they can start to flourish and show up, then we know, okay, this quote unquote rebuild is more like a retooling. But if we just absolutely suck and these guys take over, then we need the full on rebuild. It's time to just let loose, start garnering draft picks and just, going out for the next 3 to 4 years of just draft talent and trying to find the next wave of possible championship window.
Yeah, even with everything the Patriots have faced this year, I think out of everything we can agree that the future is bright in New England. The dynasty isn't dead just yet. There are a bunch of young studs on this team that are going to flourish under Bill Belichick. I think this team is a few pieces away, or maybe a few healthy players away from truly being in the Super Bowl contention range with the Steelers and the Chiefs and the Bills. So I'm not counting out the Patriots as they're a wash, they're done, the dynasty's over. You don't have to worry about them for the next 20 years. This is still a team that is fully competing, and they are capable of doing so.
I mean, I may be a homer and I may be crazy, but my opinion is if you still have Bill Belichick as your head coach, that you're not completely out of any conversation as far as competition level is concerned. So I can imagine that just a simple retooling in this team can get right back. Defensively speaking, they held the Kansas City Chiefs in check. I'm sure they can hold the Pittsburgh Steelers in check. Maybe not this year, but next year or the year after. I'm sure that, a lot of these things are going to change. Big Ben Roethlisberger isn't going to be around for too much longer. Then, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to make some tough decisions in the next few years as far as the retooling of their team goes, because they're going to lose a player like Tyrann Mathieu. And then, Chris Jones is going to look for more money, even though he signed a new contract. I mean, these guys, they have so much money tied up already that they're going to have to continue adding either veterans at a minimum or drafting top tier players and hoping that they work out as top tier players and then letting them go when their contracts are up. But I like you said, and I want to just reiterate, I think the future is bright for New England Patriots fans. They just need to weather the storm that is this year. We know that this year is completely different in all sports and all facets of life. And right now, I think that this is just a learning curve for the Patriots and the fans.
Absolutely.
So, all right. As far as the NFL is concerned, we have some interesting matchups moving forward. We will get to more NFL news and topics next week. A lot of great games to cover, and we'll definitely get to those. But there is some pressing, very important information that we need to get to. So let's transition over to the NBA. All right, so the NBA draft is right upon us. It kind of happened very quickly. Adam Silver has done a great job of working with the owners and the Players Association, getting this whole shortened season ready to go, the free agency period starting, and then here we are at the NBA draft. Instead of doing an entire draft highlight of the first round or whatever the case is, what we're going to do is we're going to give you our top 5 selections. So the Timberwolves, Warriors, Hornets, Bulls, and Cavaliers. We're not going to project trades, so this is assuming that they continue on with their picks. And here's the best news. Come back tomorrow, during the draft, later today, and we're recording on Tuesday. Come back later today. Check us out. We are live streaming the NBA draft. That's right. You can hang out with us. We are going to go through every single pick. We're going to provide real-time analysis and break everything down. That includes trades. That includes picks. There's going to be a whole hell of a lot of things. We're going to probably have different guests on just to bring in different perspectives, but the entire idea for us is to basically hang out with you guys while the draft is happening. We want to hear from you guys, so make sure you tune into the live stream. It's going to be a fun time, and we can't wait to get that done. All right, so like I said, we are going to go through our top 5, starting with the first overall pick, which is held by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Nick, you and I have a pretty similar list, so I think we can move through this pretty quickly. Again, just to reiterate there, we are not predicting any trades because trades are, they're just crazy to try to interpret, especially with the way that this draft class is viewed. Any trade can happen at any point in time. So with that being said, Nick, why don't you kick us off? Who do you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, if they make their selection, taking with the first overall pick?
So with the first selection in the 2020 NBA draft, the Timberwolves select Anthony Edwards, forward out of Georgia. And I think that I think that this is the best fit for the Timberwolves. I don't think that there's many good selections here for the Wolves, and I think that they are really narrowing it down to Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball at this point. We already know that James Wiseman has not met with the Timberwolves. There is no plan for him to before the draft tomorrow night or tonight when you're listening to this. So I think that Anthony Edwards makes the most sense here. You already have a guy like D'Angelo with D'Lo, who handles the ball. He is going to still be an on-ball guard. I don't think you need another on-ball guard in LaMelo Ball. So I think that Anthony Edwards is the best counterpart to D'Lo and to Cat. So I think that Anthony Edwards makes the most sense at number one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have Anthony Edwards. I think his strength in the in the defensive game and his ability to score and create his own shot is unparalleled in this draft. Maybe LaMelo Ball on the offensive side of the ball, but he can do things on defense that Ball can't. I think he's the best all around player as far as the guard position is concerned, and I think he fits what the Timberwolves are trying to do moving forward. I think he is the better version of what Andrew Wiggins was supposed to be. So I think that this is exactly what the Timberwolves are looking for in that situation. So instead of just harping on it, we're going to move over to number 2. We have the Golden State Warriors. Again, just to reiterate, no trades are being predicted here. Nick, who do you have going second overall to the Golden State Warriors?
This is a tough one for the Warriors because there is being stuck in the second position, not being able to trade out. It's tough. There really is nobody that's going to help you that's worth the number 2 overall pick, but you're going to take the best available, and that's James Wiseman, center. I think that this is a position that they don't have a big man like James Wiseman, and I think that he's going to really be able to help him out. Although he's really big and really tall, somebody that doesn't really fit their scheme. He is very athletic. He's fast. He can move the floor just like they do. He can push the pace with them. I think that he could still fit with them with their scheme and what they're doing over there in Golden State. So I think that James Wiseman makes the most sense here at number 2 for the Warriors.
Yeah, I think Wiseman is a very athletic 5 player. He's going to have to work on his post shooting and his mid range game. But they have plenty of shooting with, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green's ability to stretch the floor as the 4. James Wiseman will play a really good pick and roll counterpart to Steph Curry. I think that game will definitely help them. He's going to be able to defend some of these bigger guys like Anthony Davis and Nikola Jokic, and he's going to be a defensive stalwart for them. I think he's going to be the bona fide center that they haven't had in a long time, probably since Andrew Bogut. So I think this is a great pickup for them. This is a position of need for them, and if he's the best available, you have the number 2 pick, you might as well pick him up. You're going to have him for a while. So with that being said, let's move over to number 3. We have the Charlotte Hornets. Again, Nick, you and I have the same pick. LaMelo Ball, number 3 overall. Tell us what you like about LaMelo here.
Yeah, LaMelo Ball, I've been following him since he was a freshman in high school, back those days at Chino Hills. And this guy, he's the best ball brother to me. I mean, we know what Lonzo's done. Jello has not become anything. He's still in the G League. LaMelo Ball is going to be a star in this league. He is going to prove to be one of the best point guards, if not the best point guard in the NBA at some point in his career. He is an amazing facilitator of the ball. He can shoot from range. He can make acrobatic plays. This guy is a star. He just needs a little bit more time to develop. He is going to be great. You just need to give him a little bit more time. And the Charlotte Hornets, they're getting a player who will be able to do a lot for him when he has more players around him, when they get more talent around him. But I think that he is a great building block and a guy that will pay off over time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with LaMelo Ball because for me, I think that he has the highest ceiling of any player here, but I also think he has one of the lowest floors that we have from the top prospects as they're concerned. Just because I think his flop potential is so great that I wanted, like, if his floor wasn't so low, he would have been the bona fide number 1 overall pick. I think that's what's causing him to drop to number 3, kind of like his brother dropped to number 2. It's just there's question marks about him, his character, and his defensive play specifically on the court. that are going to cause teams to kind of say, okay, well, is he worth the headache? Is he worth the possible talent that he possesses? I personally think he's going to flourish in the NBA. I hope he does, just for his sake. And but overall, I think that right now he's got a long way to go in development is concerned. All right, number 4. This is where our list kind of deviates a little bit. Who do you have the Chicago Bulls taking and why?
So at number 4, I have the Bulls taking Onyeka Okongwu. I think that Okongwu is a great big man. He is going to add a lot of depth to this team. He is going to be a great piece for them. And I think he's going to be great alongside a guy like Otto Porter Jr. as big men. I think those two, they're not the tallest guys, but they're athletic, they're big, they can make plays. And I think that Okongwu is going to add more defensive help that the Bulls need. I think that they don't need another scorer, they need more defensive help, and that's exactly what he's going to add. So I think Okongwu, he may not be the best fit for the Bulls, but in my book, he's the best available at this point, and I think that he definitely serves a purpose on this roster.
Yeah, we have sort of the same idea, but we went different ways. I took Deni Avdija. Now, Deni Avdija, he is a 6'9", 210 pounds, small forward / power forward coming out of Israel. He's extremely athletic. My biggest thing with him is that he has what I consider the highest floor, in that you know exactly what you're going to get. He's extremely athletic. He can shoot from the perimeter. He can drive to the basket and score at will. And defensively speaking, he's really good. The only knock on him is that his wingspan is also 6'9". It's not that long, which is what you kind of want in a defensive scheme. So I think it'll be interesting, to say the least. But at this case, I think he's the best player on the board. I think, again, we're talking about not trading away the pick. Deni Avdija, he's been pegged as one of the top prospects throughout, and if he's available at number 4, I think the Bulls have to make this pick. And to pair him with, a shot maker like Zach LaVine, the big man Lauri Markkanen, and then Coby White, who is your projected point guard moving forward, I think you have a very young core of talent that is going to start to put it together. They're going to grow together, and you'll have a really good core of players to work around, and possibly add 1 or 2 dynamic pieces in free agency or in a trade moving forward. But overall, I think Avdija definitely fits what the Chicago Bulls are looking to do.
Yeah, and to cap this off, at number 5, I have the Cavaliers taking who you had at number 4, Deni Avdija. I think Avdija is a great player. I think that, like you said, he has the highest floor. A guy who's played overseas. We've seen a lot of these guys come from Europe or the Middle East, wherever they're playing, and it translates very well to the NBA. And as we see a lot more of these international players come over, the NBA is just turning into another international league. So I think that Avdija is really going to translate well. I think that he's going to be a huge piece alongside Kevin Love and Andre Drummond, who's now opted back with the team. So I think that these are guys that are really going to shape the Cavaliers moving forward. I think that they really are going to be able to get past the LeBron James aura that kind of is lingering around and people want to be filled as Cavalier fans. I think that Avdija, he's not a LeBron James, but he is definitely going to help improve this team a lot.
Yeah, I like the Cavaliers taking a big man here as well, but I have Obi Toppin going here. I think Obi Toppin is one of the most overlooked prospects in recent history, because some boards have him as high as number 2 overall. It's very hard with this draft class to try to find somebody who stands out above the rest, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Just that a lot of these guys are talent-wise are in the same sphere of each other, that it's hard to really pick out who's going to be great and who's not. With that being said, the Cavaliers, obviously, Andre Drummond just opted into his $28.7 million player option. They have Kevin Love, but they want to get younger at the position, and who better to learn from than Andre Drummond and Kevin Love at the forward/center position. Obi Toppin is, with his abilities on the floor, he can learn a whole hell of a lot. Plus, you have Darius Garland and his possible elevated play and experience is going to help them on the youth level. I believe Obi Toppin is the best available pick for them at this point in time. I think Kobe Altman is very good at drafting. I think he has a specific idea in mind for what he wants to get done here. And I also don't imagine Andre Drummond staying with the team for the entire season. I believe that they will try to move on from him prior to the trade deadline for any team that's willing to take on that massive contract, although it is only for 1 year. It'll be interesting, but Toppin, he's one of the draft's surest bets. He dominated in college. He had extreme explosiveness. He can stretch the floor as a 5-man, and his passing is just unparalleled as a big man in this draft. I think there's a lot of upside for Obi Toppin here.
There definitely is. I think Obi Toppin, he would be a fit here, especially, you got an aging, like you said, aging Kevin Love, aging Andre Drummond. He's a guy who has a role on this team. And even if you wanted to play big, move Kevin Love to small forward and put Obi Toppin at power forward. I mean, it's big ball, and it's something that's getting away from what the NBA is turning into. But it's something that could possibly work. I mean, if everybody's playing small ball and you're playing big ball, how are you going to compete with all these tall guys? It'd be an interesting matchup to see.
Well, that's what the Milwaukee Bucks have done the last couple of years, and it seems to have worked out for them pretty well.
Yeah. So there's definitely a fit here if they wanted to do something in that aspect and get away from the trend in the NBA.
For sure. All right, so there's a reason that we didn't project trades, and just besides the fact that they're extremely difficult to predict and what you would expect. The idea is that we have multiple trades that we are currently watching unfold and ones that are rumored. We're going to dive into the top trade rumors and deals that have gotten done now. So let's jump right into the NBA trade rumors. Starting with James Harden. He is right now the biggest name on the trade block. Excuse me. James Harden declined a record $50 million per year deal. It was a 2-year, $103 million extension that the Houston Rockets were giving him, as he requested a trade to the Brooklyn Nets. It's also believed that the Philadelphia 76ers were also on his trade destination list. With that being said, do you believe if Harden got his way that a Kyrie James Harden backcourt could coexist and become championship level talent? Because I don't think if it works, I can guarantee that they would be championship level.
There's definitely a shot that this works out, but I would bet that it doesn't. I think there's too much personality here. I already think there's too much personality in Brooklyn with Kyrie and KD. I don't think that adding James Harden would do you any justice. The ball can only be in one person's hand at a time. If it's in Kevin Durant's hand for 70% of the time, Kyrie's going to want it the other 30. So I don't know where James Harden fits into this picture. And especially, Kyrie is not an off-ball guard. James Harden's not an off-ball guard. I don't know who's going to be controlling the floor for this team if James Harden is there. So there's a lot of conflict there, along with the personality and the prima donnas on this team. I mean, you've got a brand new head coach that's got to deal with all of this. I don't think it's going to work out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least, but Kyrie and Harden together is a whole hell of a lot of personality, a lot of on the ball guard, a lot of me ball. On top of that, you're going to have to feed Kevin Durant at some point. It'll be very interesting. And don't forget, they have some guy by the name of DeAndre Jordan at center, who's going to be looking for his own as well. So there is a whole hell of a lot of of player in Brooklyn. If this deal were to come to fruition, basically the Brooklyn Nets would be gutting their entire roster and playing with 4 players, because to get Harden away from the Houston Rockets, even though he is on his way out anyway, he is going to command a whole hell of a lot. And now they are introduced with competition, because it looks like the Boston Celtics have entered the fray for James Harden. It looks like Danny Ainge is looking to trade away Kemba Walker and in an attempt to obtain assets that he could then trade with Gordon Hayward in return for James Harden to pair with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Daniel Tice moving forward, along with Marcus Smart. So that would be the core, would be the 4 of them plus James Harden, which to me, as a Boston Celtics fan, sounds incredible, but the more I think about it, the less I want to gut my team of the players and the the relationships that they have built over the last few years. I can't imagine basically gutting this team to add a player, a 31-year-old James Harden.
Yeah, when I look back at the bubble play and when the Celtics got healthy against the Raptors, I think that even without Gordon Hayward, they were playing their best ball. That was the first time I saw true chemistry between them, and they were just exhausted going into that Miami Heat series. So I think that if this team, as it is now, gets more reps with each other and continues to play with each other, they can be just as good or better than if James Harden were here. So I don't see it worth the Celtics mortgaging their future in order to get one aged James Harden, who, yeah, he's still an amazing player, but how many more years is he going to give you, and how many rings is that going to bring? I mean, is it worth it? I don't think so.
Right. I think this deal more suits Brooklyn in the sense that they are in a win now mode. Obviously, signing Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant is very evident of that fact, and their ability to move forward and have a longer championship window. That's going to be out the window. They are in win now mode. They have the pieces to get it done. If they add James Harden, I think it just compounds that fact, and they will have this for the next few years, and then after that, it's going to be rebuild city once again.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. The Nets, you know what? This is the only spot that really makes sense for, and if James Harden doesn't want to be with you, he's going to make it known. As a Celtics fan, I don't want James Harden if he's not outwardly saying, I want to be there. And he's only saying that about the Nets. So the Nets seem like the only suitors. If I were any other team in the NBA, I wouldn't even be touching James Harden, because I don't need that personality on my team if I don't have to have it. So
no,
I'd be staying. Sure. I'd really be staying away from him.
Yeah. On the other side of the coin, the Houston Rockets are also looking to offload Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook, only had one season in Houston after, pairing him with James Harden. They got rid of Mike D'Antoni. They have an entire culture change happening, entire shift of philosophy on the court happening, and that includes axing their 2 best players and trying to regain draft picks and assets to build for the future. With that being said, we have seen 2 major suitors pop up for Russell Westbrook, and we'll discuss those both very quickly. The first would be the New York Knicks. They have emerged as the number 1 contender for Russell Westbrook. My only concern with this move is that I don't know if they have what it takes to swing that trade without giving up one of those major core pieces that they're trying to keep intact, whether it's Dennis Smith Jr., whether it's RJ Barrett, or if it, whoever the case it is, they need to keep those guys intact and add Russell Westbrook on top of it, because other than that, it would be a major loss for the Knicks, and they'd be kind of right back at square one.
Yeah, I think in all honesty, the Knicks make the most sense. I think that not only does Russell Westbrook need to be in a big market like New York, He needs to be on a team where he is the guy. He can control the ball the entire game. That's where he thrived in OKC, was when everybody was gone, he was the only guy and he was scoring triple doubles every single game. That's what he thrives in. That's the environment he loves. He doesn't need too many people around him to be great. And I think he's at his best when there are less people around him. So if you keep those guys around him that are already there, and you add Russell Westbrook, I think that the New York Knicks could definitely be a big team in the Eastern Conference.
It should also be noted that the New York Knicks have been in contact with the Celtics for Kemba Walker. So it does look like they are trying to acquire a top point guard in a fashion of a trade. That way they can start building in that facet. So whether it's Russell Westbrook or Kemba Walker, looks like the Knicks are going to try to get something done as soon as possible for a top tier point guard. With that being said, going back to Russell Westbrook, the other trade rumor that we've been hearing, and this one's starting to heat up a lot more right now, is that the Washington Wizards are looking at basically a player for player trade where they would send point guard John Wall to Houston, and then Houston would then in return send Russell Westbrook to Washington. With that being said, Houston says, no, that's not enough for Russell Westbrook. John Wall has an injury history. We want to kind of offset that injury history with a few more possible draft assets or role players that you guys are willing to trade. So that's what's holding up this deal. Washington's looking for a 1-for-1 player swap. But I think that would be very interesting. Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal together in Washington would create a very interesting, almost redundant dynamic duo.
Yeah, Russell in DC would be interesting. I think that it could work out just like it would with the Knicks because he is the guy. Bradley Beal is a role player, and although he's great, he is still beneath Russell Westbrook. And so Russell Westbrook still has all of that ball time. I just don't know how this trade gets done, especially when Washington is saying we only want to give up John Wall, who we are telling you, take our word for it, he is just as good as he used to be. And the Houston Rockets, they're trying to get as much draft capital or as many future stars as possible. So I just don't see the two figuring out a deal that works for them before another suitor comes along and strikes a deal with the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Again, the Rockets are attempting to acquire as many draft assets as possible. They want whatever culture change they're trying to bring in. They want an entirely new on-court regime as well, and that was signified again. They moved on from Robert Covington as well. To acquire draft assets. Robert Covington, although he's not a massive name, he was part of the old culture. He fit the D'Antoni system. He was a bench player for them in that aspect, but the Rockets sent Covington to Portland with the Trailblazers. They got back Trevor Ariza. They got the 16th overall pick and a 2021 protected first-round pick. The protection hasn't been noted just yet, but a lot of trade assets back for a player like Robert Covington.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, we have a lot of trade rumors and trades that have already happened. So I want to back off the rumors. I want to just quickly address a few trades that have actually happened. That way we can get back to the rumors and kind of break those down. But the first one, and probably the most notable, the Oklahoma City Thunder traded future Hall of Fame point guard Chris Paul and guard Abdel Nader to the Phoenix Suns in return for forward Kelly Oubre, guard Ricky Rubio, guard Ty Jerome, guard Jalen Lecque, and a 2022 first-round pick. To me, you have CP3, Devin Booker, and DeAndre Ayton, and to me, like, that is an incredible big three that you have to work with. Now you just need 2 role players, 2 3-and-D guys that can run up and down the floor with and make shots when they need to. But Devin Booker is going to be the scorer that you need. Ayton is the defensive stalwart, and you have CP3, who's now your floor general. This is the exact way that you need to build a championship caliber team. And while I'm not sure that they're at that level just yet, the move to acquire CP3, his leadership and his talent, especially this late in his career, are going to help the Suns become contenders and get into the conversation. They were so close getting into the playoffs last year. They won out in the bubble and still missed it by a half a game. Adding CP3 is going to enhance their ability to win more regular season games. That way, it doesn't come down to a last second, Hail Murray, if you will. But sorry, it's Phoenix. I had to. But it just shows you that the Suns are in a win now mode. They want to show their fans, but specifically Devin Booker, that they are willing to do whatever it takes to keep him in Phoenix. They don't want to move on from him. They want him to understand that they will do whatever it takes to win and keep him happy. And I think this goes a long way in doing just that.
Absolutely. I love what the Suns are doing right now. You need to do anything and everything you possibly can to keep Devin Booker right where he is, because he is the guy to have. I absolutely love Devin Booker for multiple reasons. This is one of the best players in the NBA right now. He is a great guy, and to have CP3 there now, he's going to facilitate not only to him but to everybody else. I think that CP3 was doing nothing last year, or he was doing everything last year on a team that was he was doing everything on a team that was going nowhere, and to see a guy of CP3's caliber be thrown around the NBA the last few years, it's not doing him justice, because he is playing at such an elite level still. But when you see a guy like this tossed around the league, you think that he's washed. Well, CP3 is not washed in the slightest, and this team is for real. I think they are one piece away now from being true contenders in the West.
I think Houston gave up on CP3 too quickly. Obviously, they were given the shiny Russell Westbrook instead of CP3, and that's what they went with. But we can
get into Houston at another point in time, but we can talk about it tomorrow on the live stream.
For sure.
But I think Houston has not, like, the culture there was a problem, and I think that's the reason all of the players there didn't work out. It was merely a culture issue, and that's why they're all going to work out other places.
For sure. But just to get back on track here, on top of the CP3 trade, the Oklahoma City Thunder also traded point guard Dennis Schroeder to the Los Angeles Lakers in return for shooting guard Danny Green, the number 28 overall pick in this year's draft. Those are 2 major assets that the Thunder bring back. And just so you understand exactly what the Thunder have been up to, I want to list this off so you guys understand. And what I can do is, if you go to our Twitter, it's posted there as well. But this is what the Thunder have for the next 6 years in the draft. 2020, they have the Nuggets first round pick, the Lakers first round pick. 2021, they have their own first, the Heat first, and a Houston pick swap. 2022, they have their own first, the Clippers first, and the Phoenix Suns first. 2023, they have their own first, Clippers pick swap, Heat first. 2024, their own first, the Clippers first, the Houston Rockets first. And in 2026, they have their own first, the Clippers first, and the Houston Rockets first. They have an immense amount of talent. You thought Danny Ainge back in Boston, when he garnered all those assets back from the Brooklyn Nets back then and swindled them with KG and Paul Pierce. What they have going here, Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder, this is an absolutely incredible job that they have just acquired so many picks. Now, obviously, these picks have to hit, and they have to get, a lot of them are going to be later on. But what we're seeing with these teams that have so many draft picks is that they're going to bundle these together. They're going to move up in the draft. They're going to bundle them for stars that are falling out of favor in their current cities. A lot of moving pieces here, and they have every bit of ammunition to get any possible deal done.
Yeah, Oklahoma City is in prime position to be great in the future, and I think Houston's doing the same thing right now. I think there's a few different organizations that are really trying to get ready for the future, and Oklahoma City is really laying the groundwork for what it looks like to be in a full rebuild.
Yeah, for sure. But and again, we'll get into more depth tomorrow. What I want on the live stream, so make sure you check that out. We will be answering questions as well. But I want to continue on with exactly what we have here, because there's still a lot more to get to. Jrue Holiday, the point guard for the former Pelicans point guard, traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. But the deal that the Bucks gave up for Jrue Holiday was a bit concerning and essentially made us shake our heads a little bit. The Pelicans traded Jrue Holiday to the Bucks for guard Eric Bledsoe, guard George Hill, 3 first-round draft picks, and 2 pick swaps on top of it. So that's 5 possible draft picks, plus Eric Bledsoe, who's an incredible point guard, and George Hill, who's a great role player. Do you think that they gave up too much?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you look at it, Eric Bledsoe was the 3rd best player on this team, and now you go get Jrue Holiday, who's again the 3rd best player on this team. Like I don't know where you're improving to give up that much for a guy that's not going to give you that much more in return.
Right.
The trade just makes no sense in every aspect.
I don't think that Jrue Holiday is that much more of an upgrade over the combination of George Hill and Eric Bledsoe. And you may call me crazy, but I know he is a great talent, but their combined ability is packaged into one, and then all of the assets that you gave up on top of it. I mean, New Orleans, those 5 picks turned into the 2020 first round pick for the Bucks, which is through the Indiana Pacers. So they have the Pacers pick. Then in 2024, they have the right to swap. 2025, they have an unprotected first round pick. 2026, they have a right to swap picks if they so choose. And 2027, they have another unprotected first round pick. This is all under the assumption that the Milwaukee Bucks continue to keep Giannis and continue to play at such a championship caliber level, or competition level, that those picks maybe don't matter. I mean, I can't predict the future, and you're telling me 7 years down the line, the Bucks expect to be in championship caliber form? I just don't buy that. I think they gave up the farm for something much, much less.
Well, they gave it up for hope and a prayer that Giannis extends with them. I mean, what happens if Giannis decides that I'm going to give it this year? If the team doesn't go any further than they did last year, I'm leaving. I'm out. And then they're screwed. Then they have nobody. They don't have a big star. Then it's all Chris Middleton. He becomes the star of the team. I mean, they are gambling their future for the hope that they do better and Giannis decides to sign a contract extension.
It'll be interesting because, yeah, he does have to make that decision. Apparently, they are offering him the Supermax a year early. Even so, I just can't imagine that. I think he's going to take his time and he's going to truly assess whether he believes the Milwaukee Bucks can win a championship with the way they are currently constructed. Obviously, they just lost Robin Lopez, who opted out of his player option. So they're down another big man. They have a very aged Brook Lopez, and then Chris Middleton. And besides Giannis, that's pretty much it. So it's Jrue Holiday, Giannis, Chris Middleton, and an aged Brook Lopez. if you're telling me that's got to compete with the likes of Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan, I'm going to take Brooklyn every step of the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean that's as far as trades that have been completed. That's what we have so far. I want to go back to the rumor mill and just dissect some of these rumors that we've heard. These will go much quicker, but the idea around this is that we still have some big names that are not happy with where they are, or teams that are looking to obtain draft assets that will allow them to, basically rebuild or retool. With that being said, the Indiana Pacers, who we just talked about, they're looking to move on from their stars. And starting with Miles Turner, it's been rumored that the Boston Celtics have been in contact. Danny Ainge has been in contact with the Indiana Pacers on a Miles Turner deal centered around Miles Turner and Doug McDermott in exchange for Gordon Hayward, Daniel Tice, and all 3 2020 first-round picks that the Celtics currently own. Do you see this trade happening, and do you like this better than the possible James Harden to Boston trade?
Oh, I think this, without a doubt, this is a much better trade than going after James Harden, because you fill a need that you have right now, and that's getting a big man in Boston. That's something they've struggled with over the last few years. They have nobody to compete against Giannis or Bam Adebayo. You need somebody to help compete against them, and that's exactly what Miles Turner does. I think that giving up guys like Gordon Hayward, I talked about it earlier. He wasn't there for the Raptors series, and they made it through just fine. When he was back for the Miami Heat series, his impact was negligible. I think that Daniel Tice, he'll obviously be replaced by Miles Turner. And then the first round picks that the Celtics have, they're mid to late round first picks, so they're not going to really get somebody who can compete for them right now, that's going to help them right now. It's going to be developmental players. They already have a lot of depth. They don't need more depth. I think that these picks are kind of just a waste for them. There's no use that they have for them, and that Indiana can make a lot more of these picks. So I think the trade makes a lot of sense to happen.
Yeah, I think that I think the Celtics would be hard pressed to not make this deal happen. In fact, I think they should try to push it even further and see what it'll take to add Victor Oladipo to the mix. Because if you can add a player, some of the younger pieces that you have and some of your rotational pieces, as long as you keep the core of Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum together, and then you add Miles Turner, Victor Oladipo, and Doug McDermott, I think you are in an extremely enviable position where you have a 1 through 5 that you can truly compete with, and you have depth pieces that can come off the bench and provide their own amount of scoring and their own ability to just carry the load should they need to. So I think this trade from head to toe makes more sense than not for both sides. I think this would be the number one trade that the Celtics and the Pacers would want to look to complete.
Absolutely.
All right. So if the Miles Turner trade did fall through, it looks like the Boston Celtics have kicked the tires on a possible Steven Adams trade. Adams would be the only option left for the Celtics to upgrade the front court, where they found a massive weakness last year in the playoffs, specifically against Bam Adebayo, where he shredded them. Daniel Tice was no match for him. They need somebody who is an actual defensive stalwart underneath the basket that can protect the rim at all costs and isn't unwilling to do the dirty work that needs to be done and can do it, because we all know Marcus Smart's willing to do it. He just doesn't have the size to get it done, especially against a player like Bam Adebayo. But overall, I think Steven Adams would be a good consolation prize for the Celtics. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's an upgrade over Daniel Tice, so I think this still makes sense for the Celtics. He's going to add tremendous value to the team, and I think that Brad Stevens will make him work into the system. So I think that this makes sense. It's not obviously not their first choice, and he'll come at a much cheaper cost. But I still like the trade because it is an improvement over Daniel Tice.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and Steven Adams wouldn't cost nearly as much it would to get Miles Turner. Steven Adams is an aged center. He's had plenty of time throughout the league. So,
it's funny how we call these guys aged and they're in their late 20s. I mean, they're right around our age, and we're saying they're old men,
right? But the fact remains is that when you're talking about professional athletes,
especially in basketball.
Window. Right. There's a specific window in which they can compete at a top level. And it looks like Steven Adams is toward the end of his window. His window seems to be closing. And just for the record, I'm looking this up right now. He's 27 years old out of New Zealand, even though he looks like he's 45. So maybe New Zealand isn't the best place for him. But all right, so let's move forward. We have 3 more trade rumors to get to. Andre Drummond opted into his $28.7 million player option for the 2020-21 season. We talked about this a little bit before when we were going through the draft picks. We'll talk more about it tomorrow. Do you think he will get traded before the season starts? If so, where? And do you see him getting traded at all?
No, I don't see Andre Drummond getting traded. I think that he's going to stay right where he is in Cleveland. I think that it depends on really who they draft tomorrow or tonight when you're listening to this. So if they get a forward, I think that he stays. But if somehow they're able to swindle their way into getting James Wiseman, I think that you could see them potentially at that point trading Andre Drummond to Golden State or whatever it takes to get that number, what that top 3 pick to get James Wiseman. So that's the only situation I see is it's either Andre Drummond for the Cavaliers or James Wiseman.
Yeah, I just don't see how the numbers would end up working out for the Warriors in this situation. They don't have the cap space to take on a $28.7 million contract for 1 year. And since it's a player option, I personally don't believe that it can be edited, nor do I believe Andre Drummond would want it to be changed in any way, shape, or form.
Right, but yeah, I mean the NBA is interesting where you have these 3, 4, 5 team trades that happen. So I could see a 3-team trade where somebody gets Drummond, Golden State gets some picks, and then James Wiseman ends up in Cleveland.
It's very possible. All right. One more out of Washington, the Washington Wizards. This is a potential trade that somebody brought to our attention. We wanted to address it. This would revolve around Bradley Beal. So the Timberwolves would get Bradley Beal. The Washington Wizards would then get the number 1 overall pick in tonight's NBA draft. James Johnson, Jarrett Culver, and Jake Lyman. Personally, I think Bradley Beal is a great talent. I think even though he's a little older, I just think that I don't think he will fit exactly what the Timberwolves are looking to get done. It'll be interesting because we've seen him do it without John Wall in Washington. I want to see if he can do it without John Wall somewhere else. So I'd be intrigued to say yes, let's get that done, especially because even though we both agree that Anthony Edwards should be the number 1 overall draft pick, I don't think that Bradley Beal, I don't think any of these guys come close to what Bradley Beal can offer you right now.
No, I think that if I were the Timberwolves, I'd consider it. I would, you know what? No, if I'm the Timberwolves, I'm not giving up this number 1 pick. I think there's too much talent here. I'm going to take the younger player that I can develop and he'll conform to my system. I'm not taking the bona fide star in Bradley Beal who's going to come in thinking that he's going to play his style of ball and not do what fits the team's interest and what's best for the team. So I think that I'd rather get a guy like Anthony Edwards who is younger. He'll be there much longer than Bradley Beal will. And I think that I'd rather Anthony Edwards provides a lot more potential. His ceiling is a lot higher than Bradley Beal's is. I think Beal has already peaked at what he is, and although he has a higher floor, I'd rather take the bigger risk on a guy like Anthony Edwards or even LaMelo Ball.
You're a gambling man, aren't you?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to digest here. Again, we're going to talk more about these during our live stream. Make sure you tune in for that. But then just to move forward, we have the second potential trade that somebody brought to us, and that was the Warriors get Blake Griffin, and the Pistons receive the number 2 overall pick. They receive Andrew Wiggins and center Kevin Looney. That's a whole hell of a lot to give up for Blake Griffin, an aged Blake Griffin at that. But Blake Griffin would provide them with some defensive power. His ability in the pick and roll game, like we talked about with James Wiseman, would definitely help them. I think he more fits their win now scenario than somebody like James Wiseman does. I can definitely see a trade like this going forward.
I actually don't see this trade going forward because to me, Blake Griffin, he's not going to be able to keep the pace that the Warriors have. He's not going to. He's aged. He's been.
He did it in Los Angeles with the Clippers.
How many years ago was that though? This is a guy who has dropped off. He's still a great player, but he can't move at the speed at which he used to. He can't handle some of these bigger guys that he's going to have to. I mean, if you have Blake Griffin against Anthony Davis, I'm going to take Anthony Davis the majority of the time. So I think that Blake Griffin, he'll be an improvement over what they have now, but he is definitely not worth giving up all of that for Golden State.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot for him, but I do believe, like I said, Blake Griffin helps them for their win now mentality more than somebody like James Wiseman does, who is going to be a little more of a project player. He's going to have to get used to the speed of the NBA, the strength of NBA centers. Blake Griffin, can compete with some of these big guys, even though he's not the tallest of them. He's definitely as strong as they are. And, he can do it both offensively and defensively. All right, so for trade rumors, that's everything that we have. We broke down all of the trades that have currently happened, all of the trades that are rumored to happen. Before we move on, I do want to say this is just again, we are recording on Tuesday. Per Shams Charania, I butcher his name every time, so I apologize for that. This is the latest on the James Harden saga. Currently, there is not much interest from the Houston Rockets on their side of the coin on a deal with the Brooklyn Nets unless it includes one of the 2 following players, Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant. That is what they are asking for in return from James Harden because they don't have much else to give up like Boston does. On the other side of the coin, Philly is currently not inclined to include Ben Simmons in trade talks for James Harden, which basically takes them out of the running for James Harden as well. So if you were to narrow it down, it would look like Boston is the only potential suitor unless Brooklyn were then to say goodbye to Kyrie Irving, because I don't see them moving on from Kevin Durant. I see them moving on from Kyrie Irving.
I can't imagine that Brooklyn moves on from the team they've waited over a year now to see in action. I mean, the wait it's gonna be worth it, and you just have to be a little bit more patient. I'd rather have Kyrie than James Harden on the Brooklyn Nets, and I think that would work better with Kevin Durant. And I think that there could potentially be other suitors for James Harden. So I don't think that the Celtics are the only option available for the Houston Rockets to offload James Harden. This is going to be a developing story as we get closer to the draft and as the Houston Rock as the start of the draft hits, because I could see possibly the Timberwolves trying to move in and get him, or some other team that I could see the Chicago Bulls trying to move in and get him. There's plenty of teams that need a guy like James Harden. And I think that we're going to see a lot more potential trades for James Harden as we get closer to the start of the NBA draft.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be very interesting. And definitely this is, the number one priority to keep an eye on if you're an NBA fan looking at all of these possible scenarios. James Harden will set the tone for the rest of the trade market to kind of follow through and see where that goes. All right. Before we end our show, we just want to go over NBA free agency very quickly. Not a lot of big names out there, but definitely some notable names we want to touch on. Very quickly, we're just going to run through some of these. Anthony Davis declined his player option in hopes for a bigger deal. Look, the Los Angeles Lakers are not letting Anthony Davis go anywhere. They gave up a haul and a half to get him into Los Angeles. He just won a championship there. He has already said he wants to go back there. This was mainly just to bring in more money than his player option was going to allow for. I think they're going to sign him to a long-term deal. Do you have any objections to that?
No, absolutely not. Anthony Davis isn't moving anywhere. He's going to get paid more money. We're going to see the magic that we saw last season with LeBron James. They just brought in Dennis Schroeder. This team is ready to go. I think more than any other team, they're in a win now situation with LeBron not getting any younger.
Right, for sure. And then just the other basically gimme here is Brandon Ingram. He's a restricted free agent. The Pelicans are looking to lock him up long term. He likes playing with the core of players that they have in Lonzo Ball and everybody else that they have there, Josh Hart and such. Do you think that he moves on from New Orleans?
Absolutely not. Brandon Ingram thrived there last season. I think that him, Lonzo, and Zion are the future of this team. I think they have not had enough time to really work together to get it going. But once they get it going, this team is going to be a serious contender.
For sure. All right, so those were the two easy ones that we got out of the way. Then we have three that we pegged as top contenders in unrestricted free agency that we're going to be interested to talk about. Point guard Fred VanVleet from the Toronto Raptors, major piece to their offense, major piece to their winning culture. Obviously won a championship when Kawhi was there, but nonetheless had a lot to do with it. He becomes an unrestricted free agent. Who do you think best suits Fred VanVleet, and where do you think he ends up?
So my top teams for VanVleet are to either return to the Raptors, or I see the Knicks or the Hawks making a push for him. I think VanVleet with, you got Trae Young in Atlanta. I think that would be a great tandem right there. Or if the Knicks, if they can't get Russell Westbrook, I think VanVleet could really work out in that for them. They could use him as a building block along with whoever they draft at number 8. So I think that this that could be a good spot for VanVleet as well.
For sure. So my issue with him going back to the Raptors is the simple fact that I think he's going to price them out of it. I think he has already said he wants to basically cash out. This is going to be his number one opportunity. He just got a championship 2 years ago. He was on the cusp of going back to another championship this past season, and teams tend to overpay for players that have rings. I think this is his time to cash in. I think he's going to end up away from Toronto. And I agree. I think the New York Knicks are the number one option here because I don't think they have what it takes to swing either Russell Westbrook or Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker away from those teams. I think they have to look at unrestricted free agency, and the Knicks have to do absolutely everything in their power to sell New York once again. New York not being a top free agent destination is a massive blow to not only the NBA and the structure of the NBA, but just the idea that New York is not enough anymore. The city of New York has lost its luster to players because they can go whenever the hell they want. Madison Square Garden needs to be able to sell these players. I think Fred VanVleet, being the point guard for a New York Knicks rebuild team that already has RJ Barrett, that already has pieces in place, I think that he could truly thrive here. he's going to get the ball a lot. He'll be the on-ball guard. He's going to truly excel in scoring. They're just going to have to garner a couple more pieces that are going to work on the defensive side of the ball, so they can work their way into the playoff scenario. And then from there, they can, they're going to have to, mix and match different pieces to start building that championship window that they hope for.
Yeah, and the one thing I think that's hurting the Knicks right now, with unrestricted free agents, is, do players really want to play for James Dolan? Do they want to play for the Knicks under his leadership? I mean that it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of players, and it sucks for Knicks fans because it's been a while since they've had a winning season. So I think that Van Vliet could definitely help the team, but you're gonna have to do a lot and pay him a lot to get him out of Toronto.
Well, and I mean, yes and no. Again, I think he's already priced himself out of Toronto. I don't think they're in the mix unless he doesn't get the market that he's expecting to get. I think if that's the case, then he returns on the smaller deal, maybe another 1-year prove-it deal, and then shows out and balls out so he can get paid next year. But with that being said, I just think that Toronto is out of the conversation right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to move on to other players that can help Kyle Lowry and our next guy, Montrezl Harrell. I think that the Raptors are going to make a strong push for him. Serge Ibaka is another unrestricted free agent, but we're not going to talk about him. Harrell fits that power forward role perfectly. I think that him and Kyle Lowry could do something special there. So I think those two could be the building blocks moving forward instead of Van Vliet. If they move on from him, I think Harrell is cheaper than Van Vliet. So I think that you're
for sure
Van Vliet. You're not going to get the same score, but you're going to get a better, well-rounded player that's going to help you down the stretch and help you against those other teams that Montrezl Harrell is going to match up perfectly in the East against the Big Ben.
Well, yeah, and Montrezl Harrell is an athletic big man that can help against, the Heat's Bam Adebayo, or, if Miles Turner ends up in Boston, he'll help there, or, against Ben Simmons in Philadelphia, so on and so forth. With that, Fred VanVleet, obviously a shorter guard, has his drawbacks on the defensive side of the ball, where Montrezl Harrell, is compounded. His presence is well known on the defensive side of the ball. On top of that, as Celtics fans, we understand what Marcus Smart brings to our team. Montrezl Harrell brings that to whatever team he is on. He brought it to Houston. He brought it to the Clippers. Now he'll bring it to whatever team he signs with. And I think Toronto is actually a really good fit for him. You talked about the loss of Serge Ibaka to free agency. It doesn't look like they're going to bring him back unless it's for veteran minimum. I believe that Montrezl Harrell is a younger version of Serge Ibaka, and he can do exactly what Serge Ibaka was supposed to be doing for them, especially down the stretch into the playoffs. He's going to have much more, I don't want to say energy, because I don't want to call Serge, unenergized. But nonetheless,
I agree with that. I agree with that. He's going to bring more energy, and I think that he's a better scorer. He has the same defensive prowess, so I think they match up at the same there, but Montrezl Harrell is just a much better player right now than Serge Ibaka is.
Right, and that pick and roll game that killed a lot of teams in the East with Marc Gasol is now going to be utilized with Montrezl Harrell, who can perform that really well with Kyle Lowry. I think that's going to be a massive haul for them if they can sign Montrezl Harrell. And then the final guy that we have here, who will be a notable rotational piece for some championship caliber team, would be Danilo Gallinari, the journeyman small forward who is a spot-up three-point shooter and a good defensive player, big body, small forward, who / power forward, who can really guard anything from 1 to 5, can truly be an asset to any team off the bench. Where do you see Danilo Gallinari ending up?
Well, Danilo Gallinari, he's been paid in his career. He's not. He's getting up there in age. He's looking for a ring right now, and so he's going to look for a contender. And I think the top three teams that he's looking at and that are looking at him are the Miami Heat, the Toronto Raptors, and the Brooklyn Nets. I think those are three teams that are competing right now, and I mostly see him going to the Miami Heat. I think with you got Goran Dragic, who's a free agent, and I think if he doesn't return, Danilo, although different positions, offer a very similar skill set where they can both score. I think Danilo is still a great scorer. He can help you. He's another big man that can help off the bench. So I think Danilo would be best fit with Miami, and I think they could use his talents the most. But Toronto and Brooklyn, two teams that, depending on what they're, if they make some trades and lose some pieces, he definitely has a spot on both those teams.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think he fits the Heat culture very well. I think his ability to shoot the ball and come off as a rotational piece, that's what the Heat lacked in the finals, was somebody who can carry scoring when Jimmy Butler left the floor. I think they need somebody in that specific role that can create their own shot, that can spot up 3-point shoot, basically somebody who needs to be taken seriously by opposing defenses, not just in the regular season, but throughout the playoffs, because in the playoffs, as most of you who watch the NBA know, your rotation shrinks down to about 6 or 7 players versus the normal 8 to 9 players that you have in the regular season. So at this point, I think Danilo Gallinari would be best suited to head to Miami, play for a coach like Erik Spoelstra, who knows exactly what he's doing. He's won championships before. He knows how to utilize rotations and get the best out of players. I think that would be the exact best spot for Danilo.
And he gives Miami Heat a little bit extra height. I believe he's 6'8". He might be even taller than that, but some added height would definitely help this Miami team out, especially against the other competition in the East, which are mostly taller teams than them. So he would definitely add some size that would help them down the stretch.
For sure. All right. So I know it was a long episode. We went through a lot of different scenarios, but I appreciate everybody who got to this point, who was able to finish out the episode. Let us know what you think about some of these trade rumors. Which trade rumor interested you the most? Let us know down below in the comments. And then free agency. Let us know where you think your team is going to end up. Do you think you're going to make any big splash moves, whether it's in the draft, free agency, or a trade? Let us know. Again, the draft happens tonight. We will be live streaming it, so make sure to tune into the live stream. We will be taking questions, dissecting picks, trades, all that. A ton of things going on. Great time for sports fans. We are back.
For those of you listening to us on any of the podcast platforms, you can find the live stream on YouTube. Just search Trash Talk Sports. We will be live streaming. I believe the draft starts at 7:00, so we'll be live around 6:30, 6:45, and then we can hang. We'll talk about different things, and we'll have a good time.
For sure. Also, again, I'm gonna hammer this point home until you guys start doing something about it. But we have over 80% of you who watch our videos are not subscribed to the YouTube channel. Watch the videos, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Okay, I need you guys to help support us. I truly, in all seriousness, if you guys could please subscribe to the YouTube, it definitely helps us out. We have a great time doing this. We want to continue to do it, and your subscription and liking of the video shows us that we are on the right track, that we should continue to do this moving forward. That's all we need, is some sort of recognition that this is something that you guys enjoy. And with that being said, if you have anything that you'd like us to talk about, or something that we didn't go over, make sure to type it in the comments below. We make sure we read all the comments. We go through them very carefully. We reply to people that have actual things to say. And then hit us up on Twitter. Again, we're very active on social media, specifically Twitter. We break a lot of news. We have the story out a lot faster than some of these networks do. Some of these insiders, we have our own sources as well, so that it definitely helps. But take a look, and like I said, subscribe to the channel. Damn it! All right, I appreciate you guys. We'll see you at the live stream. Until then, peace and love, baby.